Absolute Emperor is on the table today, but we're not going to do a battle report the way we usually do. I want to use this rule set as a springboard to talk about Napoleonic wargaming in general. We are going to talk specifically about this rule set, but even if you don't play Absolute Emperor, stick around. You may be able to learn something. We'll start off with a bit of a thank you to OBS X Socom. He commented on the last video, the Russians versus the Ottomans. And he pointed out that I've been doing one thing a little bit wrong here, and that is I'm ignoring the save the colors. He says, hey, when you have a unit that's eliminated in Absolute Emperor, you need to make a check to see if they have lost their colors. And it's only when they lose their colors that that side gives up a point of elan to the enemy. Even if you take 8 hits, if you pass that final check, the survivors of the unit retreat in good order. I correct me if I'm wrong, but even in something like, and I know it's a little bit later, but the Charge of the Light Brigade, they saved their colors, didn't they? They retreated with honor, despite being shot to literal ribbons in most cases. However, it is worth pointing out that that's not the only time you save the colors. And a bit of a complaint on Absolute Emperor, when you write a rule set like this, a little advice for those of you budding would-be wargame rule set writers, repetition is the key to education. Repetition is the key to reference works. Whenever you have a rule that is applicable or is discussed in multiple locations, don't be afraid to repeat the lessons involved. When it comes to shooting and combat resolution, we do have this table over here that has shooting phase. And it actually calls out, if you take 2 hits, you're halted. If you take 4 hits, you're disordered. And if you take 5 hits, not only are you halted and disordered, well, wait a second. This gets a little funky because halted is, you go from disorder to halted. So these are like 2 different steps on a ladder. And then recoil is a whole separate thing. Anyway, and recoil and withdrawal are also separate things. If I was organizing this, I would have put these in under separate headings, right? Because your unit status is either fresh, halted, disordered, or wavering. And wavering, oddly enough, is kind of, in a lot of ways, it's the worst of them because, and again, it's listed down here, but then we talk about it a little up here, and it says, hey, here's how you take a waver test. Oh, okay, that's great. Now I know how to take it. And in the case of Absolute Emperor, and this will come up later, each of your units has a quality die. They only roll D6s, but a really good unit. See, the guy got 4 stands on here, and then here I've got 3 that are. So what we got here is we have a veteran unit, and we have I can't remember what it's called, standard unit. So these guys succeed on a 4-up. These guys succeed on a 3-up. Well, if you are reduced to half strength, you have a -1 to your roll. Alternatively, instead of succeeding on a 3-up and a 4-up, once these units take 5 hits, they succeed on a 4 and a 5. In other words, the difficulty goes up by 1. So an elite unit that normally succeeds on a 3, after it's at half strength, it only succeeds on a 4. And it's important to note that your wavering test only occurs, at least I'm aware of, when you take 5 hits, which means you are, with 8 hit points per unit, you are always going to be at a -1 because you're always going to take wavering tests when you're at half strength. All right, that's good to know, but what does that mean? There isn't even a reference to, if you fail this test, see the next page, save the colors, right? You have to hunt through the whole book to find that. I mean, it's near enough. I mean, it's right there, but help the reader out, guys. Repeat yourself. I know it makes it harder on the editors, but it's so much more useful. So let's take a look at Save the Colors. You don't just make a Save the Colors test when you are eliminated as a unit, when you take that 8 strength hit. You take a Save the Colors test every time you're wavering. So you take it, if you take 5 hits in 1 round, take a waver test. You may lose the colors even if you're still on the battlefield. Well, wait a minute. I think if you lose the colors, you're eliminated because everybody runs away. Then there are rules, if you're playing the bigger games, there are rules for loss of a corps. In Absolute Emperor, you can have multiple corps, each of which is led by a single leader. And then, of course, your army has its... Now, I originally planned these guys out as light infantry. They work well, but we're going to call this U. What do I mean by that? Well, let's flip to the command and control portion of this. And this is really important. We touched on it in the last battle, Russians versus Ottomans, but I think it's worth reinforcing. Here is our blue army. And the way command and control works in this game, you have your, let's make our overall commander. Yeah, as I said, this is the command post. Imagine there's a little tent on the board here, okay? Your overall commander has to stay within 18 inches. Well, first of all, let's look at it this way. Let's take the overall commander out. The way command and control works, everybody has to be within 4 inches of the core commander. And that's tough, because if your core commander has a command range of only 4 inches, that means, well, let's take a look. See, here's 4 inches. This is all the table you can command. And I rule that as long as any portion of your unit is within 4 inches, so even that is still in command, you basically can extend out by, here, we'll turn this over just a little bit more so you can see that. This is as wide as you get. You get the 4 inches, you get the 1 inch for the leader, you get 4 inches between, and then you get about 3 inches between those. So that's going to be 3, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 15 inches. So you can only cover 15 inches of real estate. And I mean, see, that's even kind of pushing it right there. 15 inches, 14 inches of real estate in any one direction. Notice we have 2 infantry units. We've got cannons and cavalry. These guys will come into play later. And in fact, the same principle applies here. But if we're all lined up facing the same direction, it's even less, because now you've only got 4 inches plus the 1 inch of the depth of the base. So you're really only looking at 1, 2, 3 plus 4 is 8, 11 inches. So you're not commanding a whole lot of real estate. You have to really pick and choose your battles, unless you factor in your overall commander, because your overall commander has to stay within 18. Is it 18 inches or is it 9 inches? It's 18 inches in the, well, depending on what scale you're using. If you're using 15 millimeter, 28 millimeter, it's 36 inches. I'm using 2 millimeter, so we use 18 inches. What that does is vastly expand your range of options. Before, we're limited to about half the table. You have to pick which way you're going. By adding in an extra command element, that's this guy over here, who has to remain within 18 inches, we can pull this infantry unit way over here. And we want to keep him in command, so we got to keep him within 4 inches of the core commander. Oh, see, he's out, so let's suppose that we're going to go heavy on this flank over here. Or let's suppose we want to drop a cannon over there to secure that flank. Well, now our cannon has to be within 4 inches of the overall commander, who has to stay within 18 inches. So we can put our overall commander here, and now our cannon is over there. And we have now created a situation where the entire tabletop is open to us if we want to take advantage of it. Not really, because this is the command radius for this guy. And if we go way out here, that means that our other infantry unit still has to remain in command, and they can drop in like this, which does open up the possibility for the sudden appearance of a red force of cavalry who can now get around behind your front lines. And as long as they stay within 4 inches of this guy at the corps commander column, maybe he's the general commander, as long as that guy is within 18 inches of each other, right? You are within 9 inches, 18 inches of the corps commander. You can accompany this one unit off, raising havoc back here in the backfield, securing objectives and attacking areas. So that's a really important rule, and it really does open up the breadth of the table. We've used the phrase "a knife fight in a phone booth" a lot, and that's fairly typical, my understanding. I'm not an expert here. If you want to talk to the expert, go on over to Jim Alzarski's channel. He's the Napoleonic guru. He does a lot of tabletop sim. So shout out to him, because he's really helped refine and develop and deepen my appreciation and knowledge for this wonderful era. But I think this is a really important thing to understand about Absolute Emperor, that it may get a bad rap when people talk, if anybody talks about it. I might be the only guy, besides me and Jim, we might be the only guys actually playing this game, at least on the internet, where people talk about it with each other, around the world. But anyway, the point is, this is really important. You got to remember this, because even once you add this into your fight, even a 100-point battle, and force red, force blue, this blue force that we have on the table right here is probably around 100 points. It depends on how you count it, right? Because it costs 5 points for every point of Elan for your corps commander. So if he's got an Elan of 5, that's a quarter of your army already. That's 25 points. Let's assume that all of these units are seasoned, and it is a French. They're wearing blue coats, right? So they got to be French. And they're all seasoned. That means that we've got our field artillery is 9 points. Each of these, what do we want to call that? Light cavalry? Yeah, let's call that light cavalry. Or line cavalry, I should say. That's going to be 32 points. So we're up to 41 for the cannon and the horses. And then each of these seasoned light infantry are 24 points. So that's another 48, 41, 48. Oh, we're already up to 89 points. If our commander has an Elan of 2, we're up to 100 right there. So call it 100 points. We're actually going to give him an Elan of 4. That gives us a total of 110 points. That's going to be important for our next little thought experiment. So what are we looking at here? We're looking at the classic rock, paper, scissors conundrum of Napoleonic wargaming. I got to be honest, artillery, infantry, cavalry, I don't know which is the rock, I don't know which is the paper, and I don't know which is the scissors. Maybe we can figure that out together. Once again, matched armies. We've got line cavalry, we've got line cavalry. We've got regular artillery. We've got 2 units of seasoned line infantry. That means everything that happens here when we roll our dice, everybody will succeed on a 4 up. Kind of the platonic ideal of this game. Note that there's no terrain. We'll get to that. First thing to be aware of, although this is probably like the 6th thing I've mentioned, our forces are about 10 inches apart. When you're playing at the 2mm scale, movement in line is 2 inches per turn for infantry and 4 inches for cavalry, meaning we are 5 turns away from each other. But I have them at 10 inches apart because notice how our cavalry are matched up against our artillery. Artillery has an effective range of about 9 inches. So what that does is it says we're right on the cusp of battle. Everyone has stopped just outside of artillery range, and it's a bit of a mirror image, so we can choose to go one way or the other. By the way, as far as points are concerned, I don't know. The British have a different system for points. I think the French have more expensive, or maybe they have like cheaper. Well, I guess I could grab the book because that might be worth analyzing. If we take a look at, say, seasoned cavalry, everybody's the same. But for the British and French, you know what? Most of these points are the same for those guys. Yeah, British and French. The British have cheaper heavy cavalry, and the French have lancers and cheaper elite cavalry. Also, their field artillery is cheaper. So there are a few subtle differences that help reinforce the flavor of each nation, but we're not going to worry about that right now. We're kind of really just doing red versus blue in a generic Napoleonic fight. And what's going to happen here is our cavalry can only move 4 inches per turn. That puts them in a bit of a conundrum where if they want to maintain this broad frontage that will allow them to roll 4 dice in melee, they have to move at just 4 inches per turn. If they decide to move into squadron, meaning their formation changes like this, they still only move at 4 inches per turn. So what does that mean? Well, let's take a look at what happens when our cavalry charges the cannons. Moving 4 inches, so we're at 9, we'll go to 5. That puts them within effective range, and the cannons are going to be able to fire. At effective range, the cannon will do 1 casualty every... Well, we got to figure this out. So they roll 1 die. Oh, I'm sorry, no, they roll 2... Is it 2? What? At effective range, the cannon rolls 2 dice, and it counts the highest roll. Cannons always hit on 5. All right, well, that means if we roll 2 dice, well, the math isn't very easy. We're going to move another 4 inches on the next round, barring no interference from anyone else. And so now we've rolled 2 dice for attack, and this time, because the horses are within... Well, we're going to be smart. We're going to pause just outside of canister range. That allows, so within 3 inches, you roll 2 dice, and you count both successes as a hit. So we'll say it moves 1 to move into, and then another turn to approach. So that means the cannons are rolling 4 dice against these horses. And they're going to do an average of, well, let's see, 3 dice is a guaranteed hit, and then they're going to hit what's from 1.3 hits before they get into contact with the cannons. Well, that means the cannons aren't necessarily going to shoot the ribbons out of these guys unless they are dumb enough to pause within canister shot, in which case our 2 dice, but it's 2 dice and then 2 dice, and now we get to roll at canister shot. You count both dice. That's still only a maximum of 4 hits. Our cavalry attacking a single unit of unprotected artillery is probably going to win that fight. Because once they get into this situation, the artillery is only rolling 1 die, the cavalry is rolling 4. Oh, what does that mean? Well, it means you better protect your artillery. It means you better get a unit of infantry over here. And the point of the infantry is not to shoot at this cavalry. The point of the infantry is if they don't fire in the firing phase, they automatically form square. And now they are protecting the artillery. Because if the horses don't charge and the blue-coated infantry are able to unload on these guys, they're still going to be rolling 4 dice to hit. And because they're successful on 4 and better, they're going to be doing 2 hits per. So suddenly our 2 hits and 2 hits has knocked these guys down to half strength. Now, again, at half strength, they're only going to be succeeding on 5-ups when they get into combat. So it'll be 4D hitting on 5s versus 2 dice hitting on 4s. That's about a fair fight. And we don't like fair fights when we play our war games. We like winning fights. Let's look at it the other way. So I think the point here is that cavalry against unprotected artillery, the cavalry are going to win. All right. I don't know that anybody's ever gone through this process for me. So there's your first process. The second process is what happens if we send our... Let's bring our blue infantry to attack this cannon. And once again, our infantry are going to start at 9 inches away. And if they move at just 2 inches per turn in line, that's going to be 1, 2, well, it'll be 2 shots, and then we want to pause just outside. Maybe we call it 1 in, 2 there, and then a third move. So that's a total of 3d6 that we're firing. We're going to get at least 1 hit. And then they don't have, here's the key, they don't have the movement to close that gap. They have to spend 1 full turn at canister range. That means they're likely to take a 4th hit before they get into contact. But once again, you run into the situation where infantry going up against unprotected cannons, they're going to win in the long run. If you've got this matchup, this is not a good matchup. And I think that may be the key take-home message here is don't send unprotected units. But I'm not sure how you do, don't defend with unprotected units. You got to leave somebody behind to protect this cannon. Unless you have a grand battery. Grand batteries are really deadly in this one. They're kind of expensive, but if you have 3 cannons, and unfortunately, I don't know if I do. I have 1, 2, yeah, I do, look at that. If you have 3 cannons, if you got an area you know you need to defend, and you actually have 3 cannons, these 3 cannons are going to be rolling 6d6 at anybody that approaches, and every single hit at canister range is going to knock somebody out. So 6d6 hitting on 5s, you're going to be doing 2 casualties at canister range, and if you've already been peppering away as this unit approaches, the unit's going to lose. But again, I mean, you're looking at like a 40-point unit against a 10-point unit. If you look at the logistics, if you look at the strategic value of that, not great. Of course, we're playing on a bowling green here, right? This is a golf course. This is a wide open meadow. Nobody fights in land like this. There's always a forest or a farm or even a town getting in the way that provides you with opportunities to sneak up on them, or that breaks up formations, or that allows you to anchor a formation so that you can park your cannon right here and you don't have to worry about getting flanked. Or in certain cases, you know that you can tie up 2 units over here while the rest of your army is off in the, away from this area. This is the kind of matchup you're looking for because you've got very few points dedicated to staving off a whole lot of points. You're going to have a better mismatch on your terms elsewhere on the battlefield. But all of this analysis is in service to another, I think, much more important lesson when it comes to Napoleonic wargaming. All of our useful thought exercises have assumed that we are engaged in a meeting engagement. And that where two armies have essentially agreed to meet across a field of battle. They've lined up and they're trying to destroy the enemy forces. And I don't think that's appropriate for Napoleonic games. Typically, in the Napoleonic era, somebody had something that somebody else wanted. Somebody possessed a town that the other guy wanted to seize. You don't have meeting engagements. You have a clear-cut attacker and defender. And even if it's the case of something simple, like a hill or a bridge, this hill commands the surrounding countryside. I want to get my cannon up there. Come at me, bro. Or a bridge that controls the only river crossing within 20 miles. Somebody has that, and somebody wants it, and the attacker is moving against a defender. And I think that's really where my battles have stumbled. And maybe this is old news to you, but maybe it's a useful reminder that meeting engagements don't really apply. That what really counts in a Napoleonic battle is figure out who the attacker is and figure out who the defender is. Where it gets really complicated is how valuable is this hill from a points perspective? Exactly how many more guys should I allocate to the attacker? Blue force is defending this hill. And look, they got a nice big cannon, and the hill is protected on one flank by, well, actually, let's do this. It's protected by a cannon. It's protected by all these boys. There's no river here. We're not going to worry about that. There's some cavalry kind of hiding around the backside, ready to sweep around, and maybe a farm over here complicating things. How many points is this hill worth? How many extra units do I need to dedicate to my red-coated attackers? Not all hills are created equal. This hill may be worth less points than a hill with a forest right there. Look, now you've got a hill with a secured flank. Whatever we decide for our attacker bonus, we're going to have to add one more unit to account for the fact that this cannon is essentially unflankable. Fortunately for us, old Boyd Bruce offers us some advice. Defensible terrain, or just assume that a hill or town is equal to a division. The side with the fewer troops will always be the defender. Gets to decide, all right, we got to pull that apart a little bit. What if we've got two objectives, a hill and a town? Now we have to add two divisions to our attackers. But hey, wait a second. Remember that we only have one corps commander, and each corps commander can only command as many divisions as he has points of elan. If this is a 3-point corps commander, I need a second corps commander. Maybe I need a second 3-banger. And if we're attacking two different areas, two different strong points, well, hey, howdy, hey, buckaroo. I guess that means I have to start doing more multiple corps fights. 1v1 corps fights don't really work so well in Absolute Emperor. They're quick, they're dirty. Well, I shouldn't say they're dirty. It's a pretty quick, clean fight. You can get it done in about 30 minutes, maybe 45. 1 corps, 2 corps for the attacker. That's the other thing to point out when you're doing this. And this may be kind of a detachment. Maybe it's a reduced size corps. Hey, we need to secure this hill because there's a broader battlefield going on way over there off the table. And if this hill falls, we're going to be in big trouble. That's how you have to think about these. Don't think about it as one corps meeting, one corps blundering into each other on the battlefield. Think about them as just a tiny slice of a larger fight in which a couple of corps have been dedicated to rousting out and securing an important strong point, whether it's a hill, a town, a bridge, or probably not a forest. But maybe that forest controls a flank, so I don't know, maybe that one too. So there's some thoughts, general thoughts on Napoleonic Wargaming, Absolute Emperor, maybe old news for some of you old hands, and this is largely a channel dedicated to the elite level wargamers, but you know, it's a first for everybody, right? And we got to talk about these things or nobody learns anything. That's what we're here for. In fact, I'm here to learn from you guys. We're doing a Warhammer 6th edition fantasy battles, and I've had some phenomenal ideas for that campaign that I am absolutely going to incorporate. I'm probably going to forget who made those suggestions, which makes me feel bad. And if you teach me something, I'll probably forget your name too. But know that other people read those comments, and you're not just making my channel better, you're making the entire hobby better. So keep it up, guys. If I forget things like waiver tests, if I forget things like losing the colors, let me know in the comments. Just be cool, man. That's what it's all about. That's all I got for you today. Until next time, I'm praying for you.